Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the BFNL Footy Show for another week, proudly brought to you by McDonald's Ballarat and Ballarat Toyota, long-time partners of the BFNL Footy Show. Shaun Kelly's my name. Joining me once again, Liam Brady. Brads, welcome back to the Footy Show, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Good to be back for another show, mate. Looking forward to it. Big weekend of BFL action last weekend, mate. Many sides started their season, so looking forward to talking about some really good games.
Yeah, it was indeed, and there were some really good games last weekend. It was round one in action last weekend, and I suppose one of the main results and our first talking point for the week to look at was the Bacchus Marsh Footy Club. Didn't really take a lot of love into their game against Sunbury, but I had a look at the side when it was released on Thursday, Friday, and I thought I'd change my tip based on that because I thought, hang on, this looks like on paper like a pretty good Bacchus Marsh side, and they went out and showed that on the weekend, defeating Sunbury by 19 points.
I think this time last week we spoke about the Sunbury recruits and I suppose the good off-season that they've had, but we probably didn't speak enough about Bacchus Marsh.
No.
Certainly we spoke about them, hopefully improving on last year's performance and in terms of, I think if they make the 6 this year, that's a real step forward.
Yep, which is what they need to do to take that step forward.
Yeah, that's right.
And as Adam Sutherland said last week, they're gradually taking steps. That next step for them is to finish in the top 6.
Exactly, and look, to get early wins on the board for a young team is really important as well. I know we'll touch on the other games later, but certainly a massive confidence boost for Bacchus Marsh, having a round one victory against a good opposition.
And Cam Richardson, absolutely sublime from all reports as well. 4 goals on the weekend, including a couple in that last quarter to get them up and going.
He's a quality player, and we all know that. And the thing about Cammy is he can obviously play up forward, but also push through the midfield. His body type lets him sort of run all day, and obviously go down back as well. So he's very versatile, and for him to start the season in good form is a real bonus for Bacchus Marsh.
Speaking of teams that a lot of people may have written off during the off-season, North Ballarat City showed on the weekend that they're not going to drop off too far, I don't think. They had a good win against East Point, 13-10, 88 to 10-15, 75. Watched the last quarter of this game, really good game of footy, and North City showed that they're up and about. And obviously a lot of people talk about the players they've lost. The players they've still got: Simon McCartan, Ryan Luke, Ryan Hobbs, Derek Micallef, the Bromley Lynch boys, Spud Graham, blokes like that would slot into anyone's best 22. You add Jordan Burke, who really gave them a target up forward and was a real presence at centre half forward, and Marty Curtis in his first game as well, and they're going to be around the mark again. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. We probably focused too much on the players they lost last week. As you said, they've still got a real core group of players. Those guys you mentioned, they're all premiership players. I know Jordan Burke has had a good last couple of years as well, but those other players you mentioned have been an integral part of why they have been a force over the last couple of years. And those younger players that I suppose are underneath those core group of players are also getting games into them as well. Like they feel those guys played most of the season last year. I think that the Bromley Lynch boys are players that really stood up last year, and with players like Base McNamara moving on now. Mitch Jenkins not playing, Jade Knorr not playing anymore. It's going to give those guys more opportunity to actually own that midfield. I think we saw that on Saturday against East Point.
Frustrating watching the BLs on the weekend as well. In the last couple of years, Josh has gone with kind of the shaggy mop kind of look, and Sam went with the nicely cropped thing. They've reversed it now. Josh has got the crop and Sam's got the shag, so it was quite confusing thinking which one's which, and then looking at the numbers and thinking, hang on, they're the wrong way around.
Yeah, it's good to see Sam back playing as well.
Yeah,
he had some injuries over the last couple of years as well, so they'll need those two boys firing all year. Simon McCartan is such a good player. He's been a interleague representative over the last couple of years, and for him to, I suppose, stand up now with players like Base not there gives him a good opportunity.
Third talking point from the weekend, the night game up at Lake Wendouree, and of course Wendouree, if I was going to say, because they were wearing the red and white. Lake Wendouree taking on Redan and running over the top of them in the end. It was very close to three-quarter time, and Lake Wendouree ended up running over the top of them the better and getting the win. Is that a concern that Redan ran out of legs a little bit at the end of the game?
Oh, I don't think so. I think Redan would be the first to admit they've probably a fraction underdone in terms of leading into round one.
Gilly said as much when I spoke to him for their website season preview about 4 weeks ago.
And they know they've got a few players to come back into their side, so I think they would have been disappointed to obviously lose the game, considering they're in certainly a winning position for most of the game. They led pretty much all night, but Lake Wendouree are a class outfit. They're going to be a very hard side to beat. I think they've at the moment they obviously need a ruckman. Hugh Herban played on the weekend in the ruck, and he certainly battled really hard.
Didn't do a bad job.
Did a pretty good job, but Tanner Robertson will come back into that side over the next couple of weeks. They had players I thought that were a fraction down in the first half, Lake Wendouree, but I think they as the game went on, their better players worked their way into the game. Andrew Pitson was good up forward. I think we'll see Pitto play more up forward with the likes of Nick Peters arriving at the club.
The assistant coach, Nick Stevenchipper, actually flagged that to me last week when I was talking about Pitto. He said, played up forward, kicked 9 in a practice game. Yep. So with obviously Benny Taylor, Nick Peters, those kind of guys coming back in, that could be a real draw card for him.
And also Ben Taylor, to have Ben Taylor back at the club, he obviously hasn't played the last couple of years, been overseas. So they've got great depth through the midfield. And I think we spoke about Pitto playing up forward. I think he'll still spend patches throughout games in the midfield, but to have a player like him up forward who's so strong for his size, good overhead, and smart around goals is a massive bonus. Look, I think Lake Wendouree is certainly one of the sides to beat, and their last quarter was fantastic. They won the game by, I think, 3 goals in the end, and I think they're going to be very hard to beat all year.
Well, the Lakers don't have to worry about things too much this weekend because they've got the round 2 bye, but sorry
to bait him. We should also mention that they wore the old Wendouree jerseys, and it was good to see a lot of old Wendouree people at the game. I was at the game myself and ran into a couple of people who...
There was a fair few people at the game as well. It was a good crowd.
Yeah, I hadn't seen for a fair while, so it was good to see those people back there, and no doubt they kicked on long and hard in the night after a good victory.
Yeah, we saw the red and white jumpers on the screen a few minutes ago when we were looking at some of the highlights from this match. But as we said, the Lakers with the bye this week as we look at round 2 and some pretty good games of footy coming up in the BFNL this week. ANZAC Day round under lights. We turn the lights on and we head to Alfred Reserve for the first time in its new configuration. East Point taking on Ballarat. This should be an interesting game, especially with Ballarat getting a round 1 win.
Yeah, look, Ballarat, I managed to watch most of their game on the weekend against Sebastopol.
When you weren't watching the netball, of course.
They've got a very young side, Ballarat, and they'll I suppose really enjoy playing in a big game this week against East Point. They would have been very relieved to get the 4 points on the weekend against Sebastopol. I think Sebastopol they certainly hold their heads high after putting in a really good performance. But Ash Baker would be delighted to come away with the 4 points, and they go into this game against East Point with every opportunity. Playing their first game at home on the new ground under lights, should be a big crowd. It's a great opportunity for a young group to I suppose try and get the second win for the year in as many rounds. In saying that, East Point would be disappointed to come off a round 1 defeat the hands of North Ballarat City. Probably a game they would have went into the game hoping to win. They'll be desperate to get the 4 points. So it's another great game to get along to on Saturday night at Alfred Reserve.
Brad Whittaker, 8 goals in the reserves for East Point last week. You'd think he may come in, especially if Jordan Staley gets called up to VFL duties with the Bulldogs. Brent Fitzpatrick, a few goals as well. A couple of handy types that can come back into the side. Yeah,
look, Brad Whittaker and Brent Fitzpatrick, probably kicked about 80 goals between them last year. So
both underdone, both had interrupted pre-seasons.
So I think we'll see them both feature in the senior side in the coming weeks. Whether it's this week, I'm not too sure, but I think we'll at least see one of them in the side this week.
Speaking of grounds that we're going to kick off for the first time this year, the newly revamped Eureka Stadium hosts BFL football for the first time in 2016 this week as North Ballarat City host Redan. Another very, very interesting game because North City, as we mentioned before, very impressive last week. There's a real chance that Redan could come out of this week 0-2, which is not where they want to be early on.
Yeah, look, I think we have to be realistic in terms of Redan. Look, they would have been fairly pleased with the first 3 quarters on the weekend. They were beaten by a better side in the end, so it's not panic stations yet. Look, they've got another tough game against North City this week, and every chance they might go down. But if that is the case, I wouldn't be too concerned if I was a Redan person. Yeah. It's a very long season. We can't forget that. In saying that, though, they'll be very, very keen to get on the winners list this weekend and
very much so.
Square the ledger up 1-1. I think at home, North City will win this game.
And North City looked very strong last week. However, I just can't quite count Redan off. They'll come back after a loss last week. Some really good players in that Redan side again this year. And just got a feeling they might be able to get the job done this week. It would not surprise me, though, to see North City over the line. Melton South back in action this week after having a loss against Melton last week. Their 3rd game for the season, and they'll host a Sebastopol side that'll probably have their tails up a little bit. Would be relatively pleased with their result against Ballarat last week. Didn't take home the points, but a much improved showing on recent years. And for probably one of the few times in recent years, Sebastopol will probably go into a game as favourites with the bookies in this one.
Yeah, look, I'm not too sure if they'll go in favourites or not, but they certainly give themselves a good opportunity. Look, I saw Sebastopol play last week, and I was really impressed with obviously Brett Goods, but young player Ben McLeod, who we
Yep.
We don't talk too much about some of the Sebastopol young kids, but he was a player that really impressed me last week. He's left footer, uses the ball really well through the midfield.
Yep.
It's players like this that I think...
Ryan Nother as well, who started really well, donning the top knot and the beard this year, so looks very hipster, but kind of played some good footy as well.
And they're the future of the Sebastopol Footy Club. So, Shades Nipson will be very pleased with the progress of some of these younger players. And I think they're a big chance to win the game on the weekend. Melton South obviously have lost 2 games. They'll be keen to record their first victory as well. So it's going to be a really good contest.
Yeah, it will be indeed. Which way are you tipping?
I'm tipping Sebastopol. Just based on the way they played last week. They were in the game all day. Obviously fell a little fraction short at the end, but I think they take enough confidence out of last week's performance to go in and win this game.
Yeah, Sebas for me as well. Night football, 2 night football games this week. The other one down the road, Sunbury taking on Melton. This will be a very, very interesting game of football. Sunbury losing in round 1. Melton, a good win against Melton South. Interesting to see Brad Murphy come out and still say that Melton don't have the respect of the football world. Said that tipsters tipped against them on the weekend in the footy record and he didn't like it. In fairness to Brad, they beat Melton South on the weekend, who are a team that didn't do much last year and a tip to be down the end of the ladder this year. If Melton want respect, these are the games that they win this week against Sunbury.
I think you sort of just control what you can control. Obviously, regardless of who tips you in the record, you just go out and put your best foot forward. So
which they did last Saturday, to their credit.
Exactly. So I think, against Sunbury, they're every opportunity to win this game. And look, Brad's a very good coach. He's done a really good job with that group over the last couple of years. So I think they'll keep improving Melton.
Yep.
Look, Sunbury are a side that has to win this game.
They do.
I think we've sort of spoken a little bit about them during the pre-season, and they would have been disappointed with their result against Bacchus Marsh last weekend. So it's a must-win game for them at home. And just based on that, I think Melton will give them a fair run for their money, but Sunbury in a close one.
It's interesting, you look at the differences between like Redan that we spoke about. If they lose this week, they're not in too much of a hole. They won't be too worried. Whereas Sunbury almost have to win this week because everyone tipped them to beat Bacchus Marsh last week. Most people will tip them this week, and they will fall in a bit of a hole against teams that were lower than them on the ladder last year. Yeah,
exactly. And it's exactly right. We know how important early wins are. So it's just vital, especially for those sides that are going to be in and around the top 6. You know, it's a fairly even competition this year, so these are, I suppose, 50-50 games at the start of the season are really important.
It'll be interesting to see how Rick Hord and his coaching staff respond after last week's loss.
Will be.
And then on Sunday, the big game down at Bacchus Marsh. Bacchus Marsh taking on Darley, the local rivalry, the Light Wheelerhand Trophy in play as it is every time these two teams play. And doesn't this take on another level after last week's result with Bacchus Marsh? This will be a very interesting game.
Oh, for me, it's the match of the round, Shaun. I think, based on last week's result, Bacchus Marsh beating Sunbury, and we know that Darley have been the form side over the last 12 months and had a really good win in round 1 against Melton South at home. Having this game played at Bacchus Marsh is great too.
Yep.
It just gives them probably a fraction of a home advantage.
And it's a huge weekend for Bacchus Marsh. They've got their Team of the Era function on Saturday night where they named the best team in their BFL era. They'll have all their supporters there on Sunday as well. Huge crowd coming up against the reigning premiers, up and about after a round 1 win. It's a real chance for the Cobras to make a statement.
It is, and I'm really excited about this one. And I think, in terms of people being able to get along to this game, they can, because obviously most games are on Saturday. So hopefully
on Sunday.
A great crowd. And look, if Bacchus Marsh can take it right up to Darley, which I think they can, it holds them in good stead for the rest of the year. I think it certainly shows that they're a genuine finals contender.
And then you know that no matter where they're another, they lift another cog when they play Darley.
Definitely.
Still forward to it. Tipping Bacchus Marsh?
I'm tipping Darley but I think Bacchus Marsh will be right in the contest.
You have to tip Darley based on their track record.
Yeah.
But it will be a very, very good game of footy, and I'd love to see Bacchus Marsh get close in this one.
It'd be very good.
That's all we've got for this week. Another huge week in the Ballarat Football Netball League's football ranks. Liam, thanks for joining us once again, mate.
No, good to be here, Shaun.
You'll be out and about on the weekend, no doubt?
Yeah, I'll be heading to a couple of games on the weekend for sure. Really enjoyed the couple of games I went to last weekend, so looking forward to this weekend of action.
Oh, fantastic. And it's been great to have you with us on the BFNL Footy Show for another week. Brought to you by McDonald's Ballarat, of course, with their all-day breakfast in stock at the moment. You want a hash brown at 4:30pm? Go down and go for it, boys, because they're there. And, of course, Ballarat Toyota, the #1 proprietor for new and used cars here in Ballarat. Go and give Creepy Crawley a call and he will do you the best deal on a car in Ballarat you'll find. That's all we've got time for this week, folks. Join us again next week right here on the BFNL Footy Show.